Today's guest is no stranger to the podcast, and for the first time, we have a repeat. And she's taken Miami commercial real estate scene by storm. And the last time we talked about her journey from fashion to construction. But today, we're going deeper what it takes to lead, build, and really break these boundaries. In a male dominated industry, she's a woman that really blew them past. So, welcome back, Alyssa.
Thank you, and thank you for having me a second time. Good to see you again.
Of course, like I said, always welcome, and I'm very excited to do this the second time because now we can go deeper into your experience. And the first time was amazing. Just I learned from you to put everything in my calendar, and I still do it. Don't have to-do lists. Um,
It's
but
so
let's start at
helpful,
this. Like
right?
it's incredible because it's really leveled up my day. And if I don't get to something, I just move it to the next day, and then I have time to do it, which is not
Right.
like let me see when I have time. It's I already scheduled it, so it game changer from then on. So today, let's start with like what inspired you to pursue leadership in a male dominated industry, and what was your journey like in stepping into that space?
Sure. So I definitely think I was drawn to the challenge. I wanted to be a part of shaping the future. With regard to commercial real estate construction and development, really, it is one of the most impactful industries when you think about it, right? Without construction, there would be no homes, there would be no offices, schools, hospitals. So the necessity for commercial real estate development really is what was very appealing to me. And to be quite honest, before I joined the industry, I never really had that fear of being a woman would ever hinder my success. So that played a lot into it as well. So I really wasn't scared about joining it because I was one of the very few females that were joining this industry. But I think that has a lot to do with how I grew up, to be honest. My parents always raised me to feel very equal to men. I went to a very diverse public elementary school and high school in New York. So I always felt comfortable and confident being around people that were different than me. And I also grew up playing sports. So I was always being measured by my performance, not what I looked like. That being said, joining the industry, I learned quickly that there are a lot of differences when you are a woman in the industry, especially 10 years ago, which was when I joined that industry. And I, really quickly learned that I had to work twice as hard and really prove myself because I was a minority in, the construction industry.
What was that moment early on that you thought, okay, I do need to prove myself?
Yeah, I think,
Uh,
no, good question. I quickly learned that I was constantly being underestimated. And I never really felt that before, to be honest. Again, like I said, I grew up with a very diverse background, and I really experienced for the first time what it was like to be different and maybe treated a little bit differently. And I think it was mostly because at that time there was a lack of awareness around diversity, especially with women in the industry. And so, yeah, I was constantly being underestimated. And, I felt that sometimes walking into a room, there were assumptions that were being made that maybe were not spoken about. But there were several occasions where, I definitely was, I think, perceived to maybe not be as educated or, bullish or aggressive in the industry. But I will say that all of those experiences really taught me to fight harder and made me hungrier because sometimes, I think there's can be two different types of people. And for me, if someone tells me no or if someone underestimates me, I'm always going to go twice as hard. So that's just, my experience.
what did you tell yourself to stay committed?
Good question. I've always felt that the long game was the most fruitful game. I became obsessed with the progress and the experience that I've learned in that time. I also saw, and I was very exposed to working in New York City. You're quickly exposed to the level of success that someone can have in our industry. And a lot of the people, to my knowledge, I learned that some of these people also didn't start at the top. There were immigrants in New York that started from the bottom. And so I really connected with those stories. People coming from other countries or coming from, the small towns of Queens and Brooklyn and, coming from a 3-family home and making something for themselves. So I was able to relate to those stories, being a female, not having any connections in the industry. And I really was inspired by stories of people that have made something great out of nothing.
I love it. It's not the victim mentality, it's the hero mentality. It's more
Yeah.
like, I it's not a disadvantage at
Mm-hmm.
all to be a woman or to be a minority or to be poor or
Mm-hmm.
to not have anything or not even being born in this country.
Yeah.
It just takes that. I loved how you mentioned the long-term mentality. I find that the most successful people in the world are long-term thinkers.
Yeah.
And I love that you said no one successful people didn't start successful. They
Right.
started where everybody does. And
Yeah.
when you have that moment where you're like, why do they think I'm less aggressive, or why do you think I'm less sophisticated?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna show them. And
Right.
it's not really I'm gonna show them, is that I already know.
Wrong. And I want to do it for myself. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And construction is one of these long male-dominated industries that a lot of women are not even drawn to, perhaps.
Mhm.
What challenges, and now it's drawn more women, perhaps on the sales side, it was always like brokerage and perhaps that side, but never construction. Construction was always male-dominated. What challenges did you face breaking into it, and how did you navigate them?
To be honest, and to your point, women are not really inspired to go into construction, right? They think it's a really tough environment. You're not given fair ground, equal opportunity. And I actually found that to be the opposite. I think once you break into the industry and you build the relationships, especially with senior leadership, I think that's also key. It's one thing that I did, and we can talk about some strategies later of how I did it, but I think really aligning yourself with decision makers and leaders who are open to kind of mentoring young professionals, that was just a great experience, and opportunity to learn. And I think that was very important to me. I wanted to be in an industry where I would constantly be learning. Construction is an industry that is evolving every day. There's new players, there's new technologies, there's new strategies for things. I mean, there are buildings going up all the time. And so there was a lot of newness, but also a lot of stability. So I think those two things were like the perfect hybrid for me. And really, I liked that. I like this is like the stable foundation that real estate and construction can create in terms of a career. It doesn't really, it's very resilient to the market. I also graduated in 2009. Talk about, the crash and an economic downturn. But I like the stability of construction because it was resilient in a crisis, if there was an economic, downfall. And then also there was a lot of change. So it was like a perfect balance for me. And like I said, you're just constantly learning. You're around people that are brilliant, that are inspiring. And there's also a lot of team building, which I like. There's a lot of camaraderie. So there's certainly a lot of elements that I love about being in this industry.
Was it easy to find mentorship?
Not really, to be honest. I think, I felt that being a smart, intelligent, ambitious woman in this industry, there are doors that will open for you. Um, I had the opportunity to work with a COO of a huge owner's rep company in New York City. And at that time, he was also new to the firm. So we were sort of like building, a startup within this company. And he really inspired me and taught me a lot. And I said, that's the other thing too. I think being vocal about how far you want to grow in your industry is really important for women, or anyone who doesn't, have a foot into an industry or didn't come from a background of family success. Anyone who has adversity, I think it's really important to voice your needs and where you want to grow in the industry. And I think when you do that, it really resonates, especially with the leadership. And they're very willing to provide mentorship and bring you in on meetings. I think that's really important.
I love how you're breaking down those barriers by demystifying what people think about a male-dominated industry, that it's perhaps people are not willing to take you under their wing, that people are difficult, or it's not meritocratic, it's more like hand-picked. But really what you're saying, and it's an advice for anybody,
Yeah.
is don't be afraid to be a beginner. Don't be afraid to vocalize and say, hey, I want to be on the top.
Right.
And like to be with winners.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
Totally.
the credo of a winner. It's like I
Yes.
want to attract the best talent. If you're like afraid, I don't know what I'm doing, you're gonna be out of the
Yeah.
circle.
People
But if you're
sense
like
fear. Totally.
exactly, I love that, and I think it's such an important advice of how you can break into any industry, into any place, into any room is ask.
Right.
What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly. And I think, younger people forget that people who are in this high level of power, majority of them started at the bottom. And there's that sort of like human connection. When I look at younger peers or younger professionals that are a little bit scared or timid, I'm just like, I was where you were 10 years ago. Like I know what it's like. These CEOs of companies, if you look at their backgrounds, like how we were talking about before, a lot of them started from the bottom. So it wouldn't be amiss to them to kind of take young mentees under their wing. So we're all human. Smart, intelligent leaders recognize that. And they love to see when young professionals voice their opinion, of course, in a professional way, right? You still have to be respectful and kind of earn, the position and come up with an intellectual, educated opinion. But that being said, it's definitely more of an open platform now than it's ever been.
And you mentioned something important that I like to highlight, which is be respectful and be responsible. Like
Yeah,
you don't like you can say I want to be the next Elon Musk.
right,
Wonderful. Great
right,
for you, but then deliver. Like you
right,
don't because if someone is going to give you their time, like take advantage of it and
right,
not like take it lightly because it these opportunities do come off
yeah,
seldomly, and when they do come it's like take advantage. And
right.
it's what you did is you said, take advantage and then be educated and make the best
Mm-hmm.
out of it. And that's how you start growing.
Yeah.
Have you have you had to navigate difficult workplace dynamics? Like you said, at
Mm-hmm.
some point you felt underestimated, you felt excluded, you perhaps felt undermined.
Yeah.
How did you handle those moments?
Um, I would address it head on, but not in a complaining way. So that's the other thing. I would never complain ever. But what I would do, I would really take those experiences out on positive action. Like you were saying, working harder, proving yourself, delivering, being organized, going above and beyond. So I always, if someone underestimated me, I would be like, okay, fine. I'm going to, make sure that I do everything like perfectly, going above and beyond and proving this person wrong. Again, not through complaining or whining or going to HR. It wouldn't be that. Yeah, I'm sure if something was really inappropriate or crossed the line, then I would have a professional conversation. But I think for me, it was always like I'm going to prove it through my actions, and I'm going to do 10 times better than you ever thought I could imagine.
Love that angle because the other angle is entitlement or just
Yeah.
because I am this or just because I'm that, you should be
Right.
giving me X, Y, Z. But you're saying it's meritocratic. Earn
Totally.
it. And now I think the world as it is, if you're not on like your game and you're not dedicated, you're not focused,
Mm-hmm.
nothing's gonna be delivered to you. No one's gonna come and give you $1 million. No one is gonna come and give you opportunities. It's it's really overcoming those obstacles. And I love the fact that you're like, oh, underestimate me?
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Fuel to the fire.
Right.
Give it.
Exactly.
Um, and can you share a moment where you were like tested on your confidence, perhaps, and how you rebounded from that? Because words are easy, but maybe stories can illustrate how you can say like, oh, this actually hurt me a little bit, but then I am at the A game. Michael Jordan
Mhm.
had a bad game too.
Yeah.
Everybody has that, right?
I mean, I think it was more of like a 3 to 5 year experience of building my confidence. I would get, when I transitioned from being an executive assistant to the COO to going into sales, I just heard no constantly, right? Like doors closed. This was in New York too, one of the hardest markets in the whole world to be successful. I say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So I was just constantly getting no's, you can't take this meeting, or we're not going to work with your company, or we're not going to buy your service. But I just kept going and pushing harder. I think also, changing strategy around sales was really important. And I think also aligning yourself with the right people is super important. So it's hard to say if there was one particular time. I mean, there was just so many times when I heard the word no. And I think that, kind of knocked my confidence. Some days I would be like, wow, like today wasn't really great. Like I didn't get any good meetings I wanted to, or this person doesn't want to have a follow up. Like they don't think I'm good enough. They don't think what I'm representing is good enough. But I'm like, you know what? I just have to keep going, and eventually, it just hits. Eventually, you get that one meeting, and you're like, wow, and then it just kind of snowballs. So, you were saying something before that just sparked my memory, and I forgot what it was, but it takes time, like the long game. It took me, I want to say, maybe 7 years before I reached the point in my career where I was like, I can maybe sit back and have business come to me. 7 years. It doesn't happen in a year, it doesn't happen in 2 years. And especially in real estate, you were saying that the construction cycle is long. These projects are, take 4, 5, sometimes 7 years to complete. Rome wasn't built in a day, and your relationships take years to develop, and then that will very very much speak to your career success and who you are and how legitimate you are in this industry.
And highlighting so powerful how confidence isn't necessarily just a mindset thing. It's
Hmm.
not really like, oh, wake up confident, go get it, because the door will slam on your face anyways.
Hmm.
So it takes you said 7 years, 3 to 7 years to build your confidence. And I would say to earn it too.
Yeah.
It's like it's an earnest effort into keep pushing.
Yeah.
And if someone says no to you, it might be because you don't deserve it yet.
Yeah.
It means that you're still not there.
Right.
And at construction, like you said, it's one of the most important, impactful industries in the world. If you're going to build a super skyscraper,
Right.
it's not on day one.
No.
That might happen once or twice in your career,
Sometimes. Yeah.
or never happen.
Right.
You need to
Right.
be okay with that, and you need to say, okay, if I do want to get to skyscraper level,
Hmm.
what is my plan for 20 years? What is my
Right.
plan for 30 years? Because then I'll
Right.
get the skyscraper. If not, I'm going to be sitting building garages all day,
Right.
or
Sure.
not something that doesn't maybe excite you.
Yeah, and also to your point on the flip side of that, if you just keep hearing no, 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 and you're stagnant, that's also a problem, right? Like in my mind, I'm kind of like the mouse in the maze, or it's like, okay, I got a no here, but how do I go here? Like, how do I pivot to get a yes? That
Nice.
was always, and I knew it wasn't going to be tomorrow, but I was like, all right, I'm doing, evaluating what I'm doing. I'm getting so many no's. Why am I getting so many no's? What can I do better? That was a constant thought process. I mean, since I was in my late 20s. So that's another thing too. You can't just be stagnant, and you can't just accept no. Sometimes no means we're not ready yet. I always say it's a no for now. That's one of my favorite sayings. Like it's a no for now, but I'm going to circle back in a year. My father always said to me, never back down. So if you really want something, don't back down from the chase. But yeah, I think it's also constantly almost, it's kind of like the delusion theory that people talk about now, right? Be like on social media and TikTok, it's like be delulu or delusional. I forget what the trend is, but it's sort of being a little bit delusional, right? But professional, but being like, I will get that. Like I will land that. I will somehow work with that person eventually. It might not be in this way, but it's going to happen. And I think that's also a really important mindset too.
Does it come from goal setting, from belief, from where does that conviction come from?
Yeah, I think I had a lot to do with sports, I will say. I didn't play D1 sports, but I played sports since I was the age of three, I want to say, 3 or 4. Always played competitive soccer, lacrosse, like travel for the school, captain of the soccer and lacrosse teams. Very, sports was sort of my identity growing up. And, it was always about the win. It was about the teamwork. It was about never giving up, persevering. So all of those values, I think, played a huge role in shaping my career.
You said something before about we can talk about strategies, and I pinged
Mhm.
it in my mind. I was like, let's talk about strategies that help you gain credibility and respect as a female leader in construction.
Definitely doing your due diligence. That is a huge part of proving yourself and being thought of as a legitimate professional in the industry. For example, some things that I do ahead of every meeting, I am on LinkedIn looking at this person's bio, on their website, looking at their portfolio. I think preparedness is one of the most important things you can do in life. What is if you're not prepared, prepare to fail. So being prepared and due diligence is key. I think also being like a market, being really well rounded with market knowledge, trends, news. Market news is really important too. When you share ahead of anybody else, that's that's vital. There's value there. So if you know of a project that has been announced yesterday, and you're at an event tomorrow, and that developer is there, you say, "Oh, I know about this event that I'm sorry, I know about this project that you just announced. Congratulations, or congratulations on the entitlement." Things like that, just being in the know at all times in relationship to your industry, it's really important. It's very impressive.
Absolutely. I attribute what you just said, like
Yeah.
if leadership was a workout routine, being involved, engaged,
Yeah.
knowing your things is like, the squat. It's like the most important thing, or
Right.
perhaps a core exercise to get that recognition, at least to see, no, this is a real deal. You're not
Yeah.
a tourist in this space. You're a professional.
Right. Like she knows what she's talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's in every category, but I think for sure a very valid advice and perhaps routine that you can follow every day to be
Yeah.
regarded more as an equal, right?
Totally. And I think also knowing a lot of the technicality behind the profession is important. It's so
Yes.
easy to learn about construction now. You don't even have to go to school for it. You can, learn from your mentors and learn from actual experience, podcasts. Like there's so many resources out there now that I didn't have. It's like take advantage of that. Like if you're working out, you're on the treadmill, listen to a podcast that's relevant to your industry. It takes, it could be like a 15-minute podcast, even these little clips of things that you can regurgitate and share with other industry leaders. Like it's so impactful.
Yes, because people like to work with people they like, but
Hmm.
also people who understand. Like you don't want to be like, oh, what is IRR? Sorry, can you please explain what loan to cost is? Can you explain how does they'll be like, don't waste my time. I'm
Right,
I'm zooming here.
right,
Add value to me. Don't take value.
right. Very-
Um, let's go into mentorship again because I think this is such an important part of success. How has mentorship and networking played a role in your success?
Definitely a huge, huge, impact on my success. Like I said, I work with very prolific industry leaders, pioneers of industries. I was just very astute and I paid a lot of attention to how they moved, right? Like the sales pitch to managing their accounts, managing their relationships. So I was always observing the way the senior leadership, maintain their relationships and their work ethic and just small little habits that they did. I paid a lot of attention to that and try to emulate that. And then in regards to networking, constantly maintaining relationships, working on the relationships is really important. And that always comes back to you as well. I can't tell you the amount of people that, when I go to conferences, I probably know 95% of the people in the room. And that has happened from going to events, meeting in person. And it's really rewarding to see, or I guess to work with people that you like, that you know, that you trust. And also, they're looking out for you too. I do feel that in this industry, people have, for the most part, the best interests of each other at heart. It's because it's very team building, and you can't really be successful in this career path if you don't have people behind you.
It's I think construction is hard enough. You
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah, it's
eat your
cutthroat.
eat
You
each
know?
other. It's
It's a very
cutthroat, it's difficult.
cutthroat, and everyone's trying to build something monumental. It's not, it's expensive to build these buildings. There's a lot at risk. There's a lot at stake. So, the last thing you want to do is burn bridges.
And going back to the male female discussion, did you seek out female mentorship, male mentorship, or it was irrelevant to you? You were just things evolved organically.
I think organically it just happened to be male mentorship because they really, are the majority in the leadership positions still. I would love to see more women in leadership positions. But, especially when I was first entering this industry, it was all men. But I did learn a lot from them. To be honest, it was great because they also gave a different perspective than what maybe a woman would have, just because we think very differently. And so I think that was just really complimentary to understanding and being mentored. They had a different outlook on things, and I appreciated that because I think that's important when you're trying to build a really successful business.
I think I believe that it's the recipe to success is having that balance. When you have a female and male voice, when you have a female male perspective, and it's interesting that you mentioned looking at a male mentor to give you that complementary side.
Yeah.
Now that you're a female leader, will you mentor who are you going to mentor? Is
Yeah.
are you seeking like more females to come into the industry, or you're just like very meritocratic, like let's just get whoever is going to rise to the top and help them get there?
Yeah, I think I connect, and it's not really a male versus female. I think it's more about I gravitate more to young professionals that are starting in this industry with some sort of adversity, whether it's a female, whether it's what country they're from, whether it's what socioeconomical background they come from, not having any ties to the industry, because adversity can be in so many different shapes and forms, right? It could be anything that sort of presents a challenge compared to someone that might have a privilege of or entitlement of going into an industry without any adversity. So I think it doesn't really matter. I mean, I have mentored two young women from the University of Miami who now I'm so proud of. They graduated and they have amazing jobs in the real estate finance markets and two great companies. But I also, recently took on a young gentleman who didn't have parents and looking to really grow his career here in South Florida. He came from the Northeast, and he reached out to me and he kind of connected, and he's like, look, I know that you don't have, a family who's in real estate. I don't have a family in real estate either, but, looking for some guidance and mentorship. So really it has nothing to do with gender. I think it's more so, did they have adversity and how can I really bring them from 0 to 100, right?
I think it's such an important to bring every voice to the table,
Mhm.
especially when you're tackling a big feat. And I think construction is, like you said, there's so much at stake, there's so much responsibility, and
Yeah.
it's a really collective effort. So if you don't bring everybody to the table, maybe you don't have the best project. Maybe you
Right.
didn't see things that you should have seen.
Right.
Um, What changes have you seen in the last 10 years
So
in the industry?
yeah, you bring up something interesting. The construction industry is actually lacking a lot of talent, and it's mainly because people are not encouraged to go into commercial real estate development or construction. I think with the rise of tech and social media, there's less emphasis on, or yes, I guess there's less emphasis on the career that's very stable and can provide a very great life for you. So that's definitely a big gap that people in our industry are trying to fill, which is also why it's really important to encourage women or people of diverse backgrounds or people from other countries who are coming here to set up a life for themselves to join this industry, because it is really rewarding, both financially and just professional development wise. So that's a major problem right now, that it's really hard to attract talent out of schools in our industry.
I would say 100% agree, and it's because commercial real estate is not sexy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not enticing. It's not. I help entrepreneurs and family offices and high net worth individuals invest into real estate. And when I tell them this project, and they're like, one time I had a meeting, and this guy said, "Ahmad, this is really boring." And I said, "Yeah, thank God it's boring. You don't want your money to be in something that's crazy."
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know and they're like, but I
Right.
have this access into the next Facebook, into the next
Yeah.
cool projects. And I said, well, that could be 5% of your portfolio, but 95 should be into things that are a little bit more stable.
Right.
And it's an interesting point that you bring, that there's most talent is going to tech, most talent is going to social media because
Right.
of the leverage it has, and
Right.
solopreneurship has become flourished.
Right.
What do you think can make this industry more appealing for younger people?
I One strategy. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot. I think there needs to be more exposure about the growth opportunity, and I know people are motivated by financial success, so I think that needs to be emphasized more. Now, it doesn't mean just because you join the industry you're going to be a millionaire, but there is a lot of opportunity to provide for your family or your life in this industry. I think also there needs to be more emphasis, and I think this has a lot to do with pop culture and social media, on people who have made it in this industry, instead of some of the short-term rich successful people that have made money in the last 5 years. I think people don't really understand the breadth of success that you can have in this industry, and maybe it's highlighting some more, other figures, other real estate figures, like Stephen Ross, like he owns the Miami Dolphins. How cool is that? He did that by building a real estate career. So, I think that needs to be talked about more, and maybe more light needs to be shed on that in social media and pop culture. So I think that's a big, something that I'm trying to do is like educate young kids, to be like, you don't have to always, only pursue a career in the arts. Like you can also think about, pursuing a career in an industry where you're able to do your hobbies and arts or music as your passion. And, you have your career as something that's able to provide a really great life for you.
I agree, and I would actually argue that the last 20 years, perhaps, private equity
Hmm.
model
Hmm.
has been super successful, that people wanted to keep it hush.
Yeah,
Like you don't want to show how much wealth is created, because then it becomes a competed space.
definitely. Yeah.
But now that it's more prevalent, with like LMVH being the best example of how private equity works, the
Hmm.
same thing applies to private equity real estate, which is just participating in the development of construction or acquisition of real estate
Hmm.
assets, and then having operators that are extremely skilled turn these from uh, maybe like dumps to trophy assets that
Right.
really shine. So I think that what you're doing, and
Hmm.
attracting people and talking about it and showing how cool this,
Hmm.
how cool, and also how impactful.
Yeah.
Perhaps, the next app or the next tech is incredibly scalable, and you can attract the whole world, but
Right.
when I've invested into a real estate project and then I've met people at the multifamily that love living there, it really fills your heart in a different way. Like you think from working on spreadsheets every day to then actually seeing that project like and people living their life and loving it there, you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's a really
Proud.
fulfilling feeling.
There's pride behind building something tangible and having people use what you spent, half a decade building for them. It's a very proud moment.
Yes. Yes. And I would also say the construction industry is very friendly. Like you were saying, it's not that cut. There is a lot of cutthroat because there's no space for tourism, perhaps.
Right.
Tourists get crushed.
Yep.
But when you really work with someone that's like best in class or has a lot of experience, you can be attached to like pretty cool projects that change the skyline. And that to
Right.
me is very attractive.
I agree. Like you said, I think also because real estate is such a people industry, construction, development, you're working with hundreds of people to build a project. You're not sitting behind a screen. So there's a lot of human interaction in this industry, and I think that's why it's so, rewarding. But yeah, and like you said, going back to your point, merit, as long as you're a hard worker and you're bringing value, people are happy to work with you, happy to talk to you.
Exactly. So, what advice would you give other women striving for leadership roles in a male-dominated space?
There's a few things. So I would say don't be afraid to voice your opinion, or also don't be afraid to voice the things that you need in order to succeed. That's first and foremost. I would also say, again, I can't reiterate the importance of aligning yourself with male leadership and earning their respect through your hard work, due diligence, never taking no for an answer, resiliency, organization. So, and I think it's also important to show respect to your older, more senior level leadership. Because they do appreciate that. So when you're acting in a very professional manner and you're showing up and you're giving 100%, just and also ask for it, right? I think that's important too. When you're in an interview, or if your boss ever asks, what do you want? Like, what is your goal? Never sell yourself short. Never sell yourself short. If that's what you really want, if you want to be the CEO or the COO, don't be afraid to say that. And if I will say, if maybe your boss or someone senior is getting in your way, then I think that's when you make a decision. So if you're in an environment where you're not being lifted up, encouraged, given resources to be more successful, I think that's really important to maybe look at other opportunities, because you never want to be in a place that wants to keep you stagnant.
I love it. If you could speak to your younger self, like Alyssa that was just starting out of New York fashion, what would
Yeah.
you say to prepare her for this journey?
Learn as much as you can. Like, be a sponge. If there's ever an opportunity to be included in something or in a meeting or on a call with a client, like, just say yes. And also ask for those opportunities too. I think in the beginning I was a little bit, maybe not as confident in terms of going to an investor meeting or a meeting with a big developer in New York. And I'm like, I don't know, like, is it appropriate? Like, go. Just go to everything that you're invited to. Learn as much as you can, and just don't be afraid to kind of dive in head first.
Yeah, great advice, and definitely I get from you is like don't be afraid to ask, to be a beginner, to
Yeah,
be open to saying like I'm gonna go to this big developer. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not
right,
gonna, but I am gonna ask questions. I'll be like, hey, what can I do to learn more? What can I do to provide value?
right.
Those questions are very valuable, and most people just assume, and that's
Yeah.
not the way. So,
I think people are scared of making
Alyssa,
mistakes. I think people are scared of making mistakes, especially women. We don't want to make mistakes because we
mhm.
always feel that there's really heavy repercussions, but everybody makes mistakes. You can't learn unless you're making those mistakes. So, you make the mistake, kind of brush it off, you learn from it, you don't do it again, and you move on. I know there's like an emotional element to it as well, which obviously sometimes you can't, always control the emotion, but I think it's important to do your best to try and not focus on the emotion, focus more on, okay, how do I get better? How do I be better? How do I not do that again, right? And by the way, I'm sure men experience that too. Men make mistakes, but I do think that men persevere because they know that another opportunity will come to redeem themselves. And that's just, I think I've learned a lot from that sort of mentality.
Great advice. I think making mistakes is okay,
Yeah.
going through them, and it's not nothing is as big or as important as you think it's going to be. Like if you think, oh, I'm gonna say something stupid,
You're
it's not a
also,
big deal.
especially when you're younger, like no one really expects you to.
Yeah.
The mistakes are usually minor, at that age, no one's really, when you're younger, no one's really giving you that much responsibility compared to what
No,
is going.
your signature is not at the end of
Yeah,
the contract. It's someone else.
totally.
Um, Absolutely. Great advices. Alyssa, thank you again for returning
Yeah.
to the show. This is the first time someone returned, so I'm very honored.
Thank you.
And really getting to the construction boardrooms, going to the top, being a leader is very inspirational. And your story really shows how strategy and resilience and heart can break those barriers and even reshape the industry.
Definitely,
Where
definitely.
can people follow your journey and connect with you?
Yes, so on LinkedIn, I'm sure we can share somewhere the LinkedIn on this
Absolutely.
post. And then I also have a website where I post all of my events in South Florida for commercial real estate development and also private equity as well. So, you can see my full calendar of events that I like to go to, ones that I've vetted. I'm also going to be start to do a newsletter that recaps some of the events as well. So my website is alyssademartino.com. We can share that link as well. And then, yeah, please LinkedIn me. Would love to connect with more people and share my experience.
Definitely second that. I since we connected and talked the first time I followed you, you always post interesting things and you really bring in an insight into what's happening into the industry. So even if you're just curious about the industry or you want to be a you don't know how to handle or become a female leader,
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa is a great source of a resource to talk to. So thank you again for coming,
Thank
and
you.
I'll put all those links in the bottom so they can follow you. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. Bye.